Greetings and welcome to the July 14th YouAttest and QoS Consulting Solutions webinar. Today's webinar is Enterprise and Risk Compliance. Okay, team, I have a wonderful panel today. I'm going to take a few minutes and talk about our esteemed guests. We have Stacey Cameron and Shannon Noonan from QoS Consulting Solutions. Besides just being big horse enthusiasts, let me talk a little about Stacey first. PCI Qualified Security Assessor, Certified ISO Lead Auditor, Security Plus Certified Professional. Over 15 years of experience, supported both private corporations, civilian federal agencies, DoD agencies, classified and unclassified. Let me talk about a few of the projects. DoD Information Technologies Security Certificate and Accreditation Process, the DIT-SCAP. Also the DIA-CAP and the DISA Computer Network Defense Service Provider, the CNDSP, CGIS, FedRAMP, NERC CIP, PCI DSS, ISO 27001 and 2, HIPAA, SOC 2, and others. Stacey supported the DHS, U.S. Immigration, Homeland Security Investigations, and importantly, the DHS Child Exploitation Investigation Unit. A few of her awards: Information System Security Officer of the Year of ICE, and 2018 Silver Winner for Female Professional of the Year from Women World Awards. And smart enough to coupled with Shannon Noonan, co-founder of QoS Consulting Solutions. She is a certified information systems auditor, certified information privacy professional, has a BS in accounting and master's in science and accounting, specialized in developing efficiencies and internal control, ERP implementations, financials, and IT business processes. Worked recently on SOCs, SOC 1 and 2, IRAP, FENRAP, PCI DSS, Privacy Shield, GDPR, CCPA, CGIS, China Cybersecurity License, ISO 27001, 27018, FIPS 142, FIPS 143, and Common Criteria. Shannon, prior to QoS, was Global Compliance Director at Silence, Senior Manager at Focal Point, and Manager at EY. Lastly, Shannon was awarded Summa Cum Laude for Harvard Managed Mentor, HMM. This is a great panel, and we at YouAttest are honored to have them in attendance. Okay, lastly, the agenda before we kick in. Did the introductions. I'm Garrett Grajek, CEO of YouAttest. You also hear Austin Grajek. He'll be doing a presentation and a demo. He is our lead VP of Audit Solutions. Shannon and Stacey are going to kick it off with risk and compliance. Then we're going to have a little section on YouAttest, and then get those keyboards ready or type while we're doing this and have some Q&A. Shannon and Stacey, happiness, let's take it away.
Welcome everyone, I'm Stacey Cameron, and let's just jump right into key issues in 2020 for risk and compliance. Now, unless you've been living under a rock, we're probably aware that we're undergoing a global pandemic right now, dealing with COVID-19. And these have been presenting challenges to some businesses. Some of them are used to saying, hey, we're going virtually now. And some of our controls are tied to our physical controls. We weren't planning on doing virtual operations. So there's challenges that businesses are dealing in that area. With the pandemic going and more people working virtually, there's an increase in remote activity. And with this increase in remote activity, there's been an increase in cyber attacks. Specifically within the healthcare industry, we've been noticing that there's targeted attacks against IP related to the coronavirus for vaccinations and any type of drugs and research that's been associated with it. That's on the increase. The payment card industry, there are organizations that are trying to adapt with having to make some of their in-person functions more remote. And they're dealing with these challenges. They're technical challenges, they're privacy concerns, and all types of concerns that surround these type of challenges. Now, some organizations we're already technology forward, we're tech savvy, we've been operating virtually. This is just how we conduct business, but not everyone is that fortunate. So you're dealing with the fact that yes, things are happening. Yes, we're dealing in unprecedented times, but we still have to maintain compliance. Those requirements are not going away. But what is happening, the regulatory bodies and authorities, they are understanding. So they're providing extensions, they're providing guidelines, they're providing all types of assistance so you can understand on the implementation and on the audit side. So folks can still continue compliance and continue these controls, but maybe they have to come up with alternative solutions. And a lot of concerns that have been happening is now that we're transferring over to more virtual solutions, we have technology struggles. How do we support the vast increase over our VPN connectivity or our remote software connectivity? Do we have web conferencing tools? Has our configuration come into question now? Were we getting away previously with having various platforms, and now we're trying to get everyone to work on the same platform? So all these types of issues are coming up, as well as things considered with continuity of operations. Some functions weren't intended to be done remotely. So now that people are home, if we're unable to get them to come into the office for health concerns or what have you, what are we going to do? Do we assign them another position, or do we take financial hits? These are all the types of challenges and concerns that have been happening. In addition to managing compliance during a pandemic, issues for 2020 include privacy. California Consumer Privacy Act, it is still here. Next slide.
So we're going to lead into, I'm Shannon Noonan, just so everyone knows, right into the California Consumer Privacy Act. In January 1 of 2020, many of you hopefully knew or are learning now that this new law went into place. It's very similar to the GDPR requirements, has a little of its own nuances, but it was supposed to go in place as of January 1 with an enforceable date as of July 1. As of right now, the California Attorney General, the OAG, has submitted the final proposed regulation, and it's waiting for it to be adopted by the California Office of Administrative Law, the OAL. It was submitted as of June 1st, and it's still waiting for it to be adopted. The OAG cannot enforce anything until this is officially adopted. How is that impacting companies? What is really the next steps? There's a lot of questions that are coming about while people are not aware of what's going on. For the most part, companies should have already done, if not are doing, gap assessments to determine how they stand against this law. It really impacts those that are California-based customers or California-based companies and or those that are dealing with California customers. So it's really pertinent that anyone, just like GDPR, that does business in California is meeting these requirements. As part of your gap assessment, you could determine what's missing. Is your privacy notice up to date? Do you have all the right documentation? Have you identified your key data points within the system that are supposed to be privacy related? Have you identified the access points and how to restrict or control the access to these data points? And just like with any pandemic, are we making sure that we have our breach processes in place so that if a breach were to happen and somebody were to obtain data, do we have a process in place? Not only is there maintaining procedures, but now how are we making sure that you're able to handle the additional workload? Can companies handle the request of removing data now from your customers? And customers are not going to be the largest impact in the next year. Employees are going to come into effect for this Privacy Act. And you're going to have an additional request from all people from California saying, hey, I'd like my data removed. Can we handle that request? Can companies remove the data? Do they know where all the data sits? So once you've identified these gaps, you look to build that remediation plan and make sure you're able to identify the key areas and address any gaps. It's very important because the fines that come with this are not as large as GDPR, but they will become significant, especially if you are a California-based company. So for privacy, let's see what gap assessments and remediation plans we need to get in place before they start enforcing this law. Next slide.
One of the overlooked aspects of compliance deals with risk assessments. So in this industry, we've come across a variety of risk assessments while we're doing assessments and audits, some more useful than others. The goal of the risk assessment is to understand your organization's risk so you can manage according to your risk tolerance. Many compliance regulations require a risk assessment. So it's often seen as the check the box task, and you really miss out on the true benefits of assessing your risk according to a standard methodology. And then these risks are actually helpful for you because then you can make these risk-based decisions. So what a lot of people don't understand is your compliance frameworks, they're designed to add additional controls around the protection of information and information systems and provide some regulation within multiple industries. So when you're doing that and you realize, you know, all businesses aren't the same, our organizations aren't the same, it's not cookie cutter. What can you do in this aspect? You can leverage your risk assessments. Use your risk assessments to look at the controls, how the controls affect your environment. And then you can add more rigor or less rigor as needed. In most of your risk management frameworks, that is how they're designed to operate. Some compliance will just be regulatory or requirements that you have to put in place, but some of them, they have that flexibility because they do understand all organizations do not operate the same. So let's just stop checking the boxes and we can actually integrate our compliance program with our security programs because they're technical controls and security controls that come into play. And your compliance will actually let you know when you can strengthen those and when you can lay off on some of them to maybe move resources other places. So you can be compliant and you can be secure. Next slide, please.
In continuation of the overlooked aspects of compliance, it's really looking internally at yourself as a company. Do you have to meet multiple regulations? Are you responsible for meeting Sarbanes-Oxley, SOC 1, SOC 2, NIST, HIPAA? I could name a million acronyms. Are you required to meet these regulatory requirements? Do you have to have multiple auditors come on site and test over and over and over again? Do you feel like you're in a never-ending audit process? How do you make that easier? How do you make it simplified? So many organizations have a difficult time doing this. One, either they don't have the knowledge or understanding of how to simplify and do one thing across all regulatory requirements, or they don't have the tools to do it. So how do we get there? One way to handle multiple regulations is to key on the scope of work. What is the scope? What systems, what applications, what people, what processes, what's in the scope? And then from there, really consolidate the requirements into a superset of controls to combat redundancies. So then you can look at it and say, we can do this process across multiple frameworks, multiple regulation requirements, multiple audits. So you can simplify and test once for many versus testing multiple times for the same process over and over again. Not only is there ways to grow, but can you grow your bottom line through your product and or your services? If you have to be as a company to meet these regulatory requirements, why not take advantage of that and publicize what you guys are doing through your own products and your own tools or outside tools? This can be done through white papers, independent third-party assessments, some type of way to market how you guys are being successful to meet these requirements. How else can you address it, right? We've talked about lack of knowledge. Well, do you need to bring in a subject matter expert to help provide a guiding light and provide you guys with the end result? And that doesn't necessarily mean you have somebody on full time, but maybe you bring them on for a short period of time to help you get through an audit, to help simplify your process, to help streamline it. At QoS, we've done that for various customers where we've gone in and we've helped out with Sarbanes-Oxley's in doing gap assessments and helping them identify how to benefit their process and make them better by streamlining it across multiple applications. For PCI, we've been teaching people how to just speak to the PCI auditor, because sometimes you get a PCI auditor that can really feel intimidating. And if you fail any component of PCI, you fail all of the PCI, and some companies can't afford that. So how do you understand what you can and can't do without bringing some knowledge or some expertise? SOC 1, SOC 2, similar to the other two. How do you meet these control frameworks? Simplify the process, test once for many. So if you have an organization that does PCI SOC 1 and SOC 2, well, how do we make sure that they're testing it all across the board versus having to do it 3 or 4 times? And there's the other various areas with FedRAMP, IRAP, FIPS 140-2 and 3 and common criteria. If you do a nice consolidated way of consolidating all the controls, you can show how one process can meet the needs of many. And it's very helpful with the subject matter expert to provide that guiding light. Not only can you use SMEs, there are tools out there that will really help your organization automate and do a systematic approach. And if you can find ways to get away from a manual process into a more systematic approach, you can streamline even more. So at that point, I'm going to kick it off to Stacey to continue. Can you go next slide, please?
When we're thinking about tools and deploying tools to help with some of those overlooked areas of compliance or just help with your compliance program in general, the first thing you need to understand are what are your business needs? And you need to consider current needs and future needs, because when you're thinking about tools, you want to make sure the tools can grow with you and grow with your organization. So there are a variety of tools of various flavors for dealing with governance, risk, and compliance. YouAttest has some great tools that you'll hear about later on as well. So you can deal with tools that are going to help you with your overall compliance management. And that's going to include your continuous execution of your compliance tasks, your reporting, your assigning control ownership, your compliance control monitoring, and also maybe even alerting on occasions. There are internal auditing tools. These tools, you can use your tools for your internal audit department. Some frameworks require, for instance, ISO and SOX, and some frameworks require that you have an internal audit department. And this internal audit department is to make sure that you maintain your compliance. So you're not just doing an annual check the box or an annual compliance check, but you are maintaining continuous compliance throughout the length of the business. So these types of tools are definitely, and you want to do a tool, because how many of us have tons of spreadsheets that we're probably still using now? I will admit, I still use some spreadsheets, but how would you like to get rid of those? How do you when you're working and collaborating with your colleagues, whose spreadsheet is most current? That somebody, we could have a shared version, or maybe someone's changed it. So let's add automation where we can. I love this little comic. I've decided to manage my spreadsheet. I'll track things until all of our problems fix themselves. Your optimism is cute. Thanks, you're pretty fuzzy. So those types of things are just, when you want to keep that in the front of your mind when you're thinking about, okay, how can I further along my compliance program? Let's think using tools. So identifying the proper tool for your organization, it just gives you the edge you need to propel your compliance management function and program forward. Next slide. So again, now that we've sort of looked at the business, the business need, what is the importance? Why are we leveraging tools? Well, automation is one, right? So again, if your compliance tasks are repeatable, and if you think most tasks, if it's repeatable, then it's programmable. So let's use automation where we can. One of the big keys is to save money. So if you put up your initial investment of your time to configure tubes properly, over time you will save time and money. And time, and you guys have heard, time is money. So let's save these together by thinking about automation. We can also expedite audits and assessments. When we have tools, a lot of times your auditors, they're going to come in, they're going to ask for the same thing over and over, year in, year out. And you don't want to have the same thing of scrambling and trying to find evidence and trying to figure out, did we remember to do this review? Oh my, we forgot to do a review that we had to do. Did we remember this other threshold that we were supposed to adhere to for compliance? Are we getting our approvals correct? Have we, the one thing that's really big is on access controls, right? When people change jobs, when people leave, are we making sure the access controls are being updated? Do we have, and this happens, it's to the downfall for a lot of organizations. Did we accidentally leave an account turned on longer than we should have? Someone has left the organization, or the account is a temporary account that's not in use. Is it turned on? Can it be exploited? These things, if we have tools in place that are real-time monitoring or alerting and letting us know these types of things, or allow us to go to one large dashboard, then we're able to get ahead of this and stay ahead of this by using our tools, and also increasing the benefit of tracking our compliance. There's also value added from your business benefits, right? So when you're in the you have a comprehensive overview, and you can see, okay, are we maintaining compliance? Where are the issues that we have? Any type of risk assessment? Are we able to go in and see, is our justification holding? Do we need to look at reviewing? Are we introducing risk into our environment? And then this can help you with your business plans, with your strategic plans. If you're down the road, do we need to incorporate these technologies? You can actually look at it from a comprehensive overview and help plan your business activities throughout the next few years. And then reporting features. Who doesn't love dashboards and reports, right? So reports can help the administrator who's doing the compliance. The reports can help executives, and they can feed your annual reports, your semi-annual reports, quarterly reports. So tools definitely have their benefit within compliance management. Next slide, please.
Deploying tools. As many know, deploying tools can be slightly a pain in the butt if you haven't done your homework. It can also be the best thing in the entire world and makes your life so much easier. So key areas that you really need to focus on is, one, due diligence. Have you done your homework? Have you made sure that the product is going to meet the needs of your company? And can it meet multiple needs? You can really test this out with a proof of concept. You really want to get in there, test out the product, test out the tool, and see what it can really provide to the organization. If a company doesn't provide a POC, which is usually rare, but sometimes it does happen, figure out how you can negotiate a time frame of, if this isn't working for you, you can turn it off. But the key aspect of this, it's really getting in there and trying it out. Don't just sign up for something and say, I'll get to it. Really put the effort into making sure this product works for you. Because if it doesn't work for you, it's just going to be another tool in your toolbox that's collecting dust and spending money. The other aspect that you always want to see is, do you have the customer support? Do you have somebody that you can turn to with questions to make sure you're doing something right? Make sure you've configured the system properly. If an issue is coming up, do you have the ability to go somewhere and find the answer if you can't figure it out? The other areas is resources. Don't just buy a tool without the resources. You're going to just end up having something that's not configured, not doing anything for you, and then you have to redo it over and over again. So you really want to make sure you have the proper resources that are learning from the initial get-go on how to configure and make sure that the system's up and running and that the validation is accurate. The other aspect of this, it's not just saying that you're going to turn on a tool and voila, all your worries are going to go away and you can get all the right information. Is the data accurate to begin with? If you know you have a Salesforce application that has bad data in it, if you add a tool to that Salesforce application and expect miracles to happen, that the data is all of a sudden just going to come out in the report magically, well, if your data is bad at the beginning, your data is going to be bad at the end. So it doesn't matter what type of tool you use at that point. Or if you're using a tool to do a user access review, you can't just go in and expect the tool to miraculously change all your access. It's just going to show you where all your bad data is and tell you where to fix it. So it really, it's up to the company to then go back and really do the cleaning up. and make sure you have the dedicated resources. It's really hard to just say one person is going to be dedicated to this tool. What happens if they leave the company? What happens if they move to another position within the company? Then you lose all of that knowledge and what you did to build up these tools and make sure that they're working appropriately. So from here, speaking of the tools, we're going to have Garrett and Austin speak about what YouAttest can do for you guys.
Fantastic, Stacey and Shannon. That was great. And I was taking notes like y'all were in the audience because I've seen some of the comments. First of all, I have to comment on a couple of brilliant points that Stacey and Shannon said. Stacey was real good at saying compliance plus security. I hope by the next 15 minutes of your life, from seeing what Stacey and Shannon have been saying about the regulations, real people that live in this, you see how this product was designed for the compliance, but has security in mind and is part and parcel. I'm going to talk about NIST CSF to try to connect the dots. But there was one thing Shannon said that just made me laugh, and it was in a good way, Shannon. She was saying that CCPA has regulatory fines, just like GDPR, and just that the fines aren't as big yet. I'm like, Shannon, I live in California. Give us time, okay? We're spending a lot of money out here. I guarantee you, and I have full faith in my legislator will be increasing those fines, okay? That I could bet on. Okay, YouAttest, something I can't control, not the state. YouAttest, our mission, we exist to create the tools that Shannon and Stacey have been talking about. Basically, audit tools for the audit team. We're working with amazing companies that have changed the IT landscape like Okta. We don't need to recreate the IDP. We don't need to recreate SSO. That is this. Those are really good tools. What we exist for is that missing piece. How does the audit and compliance get executed to meet both compliance and security? That's what we're doing. Okay, and then to kind of label it down, take our wonderful brains from the compliance down to the actuality of what we built, we have mapped the YouAttest product to the NIST CSF 1.1 framework. And not to go through each point, but to itemize two very key points, okay? The first is PR.AC-4, identities and access must be reviewed. This is a wonderful document, the CSF Cyber Security Framework 1.1. The list not only what the guideline is, but on the right-hand side, you can see what the more stringent compliance measures and how they map. Basically, what this is saying is that you, the enterprise, you use a wonderful tool like Okta, which we're integrated into, and Austin will show you, but you have to review those periodically, depending on your business and your enterprise. You have to have an outsider review and attest those accesses. Who gave what and why? Another key point is permissions are part of change control. And it sounds obvious, but it's good that these mechanisms get written out there so we as security personnel can look at this and remind ourselves, yes, what is my governance around not only the existing policies and permissions it gives, but the changes that I put in place. And that is exactly what we built in YouAttest. And for that, I'm going to hand it over to Austin to get down and dirty and show exactly what is built.
Thanks, Garrett. And thank you, Shannon and Stacey. That was really useful information that you provided. I will be talking about YouAttest and walking through the solution of how we meet these requirements that Garrett was just talking about. But I really also wanted to point out, I love what Stacey said about integrating your compliance and your security. That's what companies are really looking for right now. They want to be able to conduct these access reviews to help them meet compliance standards, but it's also a way to help make sure that they're secure. And really what is needed today is the ability to say who gets what, who gave what access, when, and why was this access granted. So what we're really going to be going through here are these access certification processes. Now, the driving factor behind these, as Garrett mentioned, was NIST framework is something that is outlining the driving, this is what is recommended, but also included is the SOX and the ISO requirements. So if you look, these are just two examples of many that you'll see where you have to attest for all users, groups, and admins. And on top of this, you have to have the ability to delegate this out. You need those segregation of duties available so you are able to make sure that the right person is reviewing the correct accounts and that it's not just being handled by one bulk action and you're not actually taking a closer look at that access. And then also what ISO is outlining is just the ability to review user access rights, but also to be able to adjust these rights. So if you have to remove access, or if you have to delegate the review out further, or even just certify and say that this access is appropriate, you need a tool that has these abilities. The current solutions out there that offer these abilities, I think we beat up spreadsheets plenty, but I'll go into it a little bit more. Shannon and Stacey did a great job outlining just the risk of using them and also the time. But when you have something that takes up this much time and could be so cumbersome, you also have the problem of human error in there. So there's the ability that humans might make mistakes, and they were outlining what the appropriate measures were and what you should really be looking for in a tool and the benefits of automation. And what they came to say was that a really big part of it is a comprehensive overview. And that is what a tool that will provide automation will be able to give you. But unfortunately, a lot of the current solutions out there are extremely bulky. They're expensive. They require months and months of setup. And the more applications you integrate, the harder it is to continue to keep access control and to continue to keep this up with your current company. So scaling with these bulky on-premise solutions becomes a task in its own. And now you're having to take more and more resources. And at this point, you might as well be on a spreadsheet taking some risk. So what we set out to provide was a solution that was able to keep up with the scaling business. We did this, as Garrett mentioned, by not reinventing the wheel, not creating a single sign-on, but creating something that integrates perfectly with Okta. So what we're doing is we're 100% cloud-based. We give you the ability to, with just one API integration, be able to pull all the information from your Okta environment and applications outside of your Okta environment as well. But you are able to revoke, certify, and delegate out the process of access review, all within about 5 minutes of setup, no bulky on-premise software required, and you are able to produce really comprehensive reports that are able to show who has access to what took place during this access review, and was this appropriate? So with this all being said, going into this is actually how it is set up. I mentioned just with the API integration, it's a very simple setup, but what is possible from this is not simple. It's pretty extraordinary. You have the ability to pull not only your Okta applications, but now we could leverage the existing API integrations that Okta has with either your Active Directory or UD. And so now you're able to pull that information as well. You're able to pull user entitlements. You can see the level of access that they have. You can see who their managers are. And you could have a really detailed access control report that's that mixture of being able to meet compliance, but also now you have a good understanding of security as well. I'm going to be jumping into a demo start to finish of what it looks like to run one of these access reviews using YouAttest. It's pretty quick, pretty straightforward, but before I jump straight into what it looks like to run an access control, I'm just going to talk about logging in and the setup. So you'll notice we're logging into Okta as well, and this is because we're tethering the two accounts. We're enabling you to be able to pull information from Okta into YouAttest, and you could do so all not having to have Okta admin access. So this could be done by anyone on the team, so long as it's set up properly and they're given the proper credentials. And these credentials right here for setup, it's very straightforward. If we wanted to add a new API, we would simply just name it, provide an Okta URL, and enter the API key. And that is start to finish all the setup you need to start running your access controls and to start seeing who has access to what and delegating that out for proper reporting. Over here, you can see the type of audits you could perform. So we have a application audit, or you could go one by one through applications or all your applications. We have a group audit. This is if you want to see who is assigned to certain groups in Active Directory or UD within Okta. And then we have our user audit. This right here will go over user activity. It'll show their logs, and you could audit by user. So if you want a specific user, you could click in and see what groups they have access to, at what level, and what applications. Finally, we know that applications aren't always in the Okta environment. And for this reason, we do have the ability for a CSV audit. And so with this CSV campaign, so long as you export the information from the application, you can upload the CSV file into YouAttest, you'll be able to perform that audit. But right now, what I'm going to focus on is just going through an application audit. And so right here, we're just going to create a new campaign. I'm going to select, I want to run a campaign for my applications, select the API source. You'll notice we could have multiple Okta environments there if you'd like. And then we will have an application audit. Name it, and then simply just select a due date. Once we've done this, what's showing up on our next screen, this is a complete list of all the applications that are in your Okta environment. So from here, you could either select all applications, or you could select any combination of applications you'd like. I'm just going to select these three right here and click done. Now, while this is loading, what's happening is it's putting together a spreadsheet, or not spreadsheet, apologies. It's putting together a worksheet. And what this is doing is it's compiling all your users in one specific area. And you could see who has access at what level, and it's giving you an opportunity where you can delegate this out to all the managers, all the application owners to help on this access review right here. And so you can see we have right here the application, the username, the type of assignment, whether it's individual or group, and then these two empty boxes here, which will be populated once we go further into actually delegating out. That'll show who it was sent to, and then the reviewed on date. So if I click certify right here, you can see the reviewed on will be populated. But I'm going to select all these and then click certify and apply. Typically, this won't be the case. You'll most likely have some access that you'll have to revoke, and you could do so like such. I want to mention no applications or no users have been removed from their applications at this point. This is simply just the worksheet. And we'll go back out and do that in a little bit, but I want to mention how we delegate out. So how do we meet that requirement where we do have to make sure that the proper person's reviewing this? We have a few options. So right here, we could click delegate and simply just enter in the email address of the manager or who's responsible for this user. Or to save time and a more efficient approach, you could go to more actions and auto delegate. And now what this is going to do is it's going to take that user information and it's going to automatically assign each of these users to the respective manager. And I want to point out that if you are using, if lifecycle management is enabled, these areas and fields will be populated. You will be able to see the role, the profile, user manager, and job profile as well. But going back out, once this is 100% attested for, we're going to scroll down to our most recent campaign, and I'm going to click execute. And so what's happening right here, earlier I mentioned the user that we revoked, they now will no longer have access to this application. This is making changes to remove their access. And then more importantly, we're going to have a detailed report that'll show what actually took place, when, and by whom. So go back into it. This is the report. You can see we have a few places that you could view this. You could view it as a CSV, an Excel, a PDF, or a print. I'm going to go into print right here. And then we will zoom into this just so you can get a better look. But you can see we have the application, the username and information. We have the assignment. But more importantly over here, we have the action that took place and if it was completed, and then at what time. So right here you can see we certified this user, we revoked this user, and it was completed. So now this user right here will no longer have access, and you'll have a detailed report showing what took place and at what level. It really gives you a good insight on who has access to what, and then also when you're going through those audits, if it's ISO or SOX, or you're just trying to meet the NIST requirements that are outlined, you have this ability to say, yes, we did this, and we have the complete ability to maintain our access control. I'm just really quickly going to touch on the CSV-based audits. It's a very similar process. If we go into an existing campaign, I could pull this up and you could see we have multiple roles for this one user in Salesforce application that was uploaded using a CSV. The process for setting this up is just slightly different. The only thing that is different about this is, as mentioned, you will be uploading a CSV. Now, it doesn't have to be in any sort of template. You will simply upload it and then map your fields to the fields that are outlined in YouAttest, but you could also add your own custom fields if you want those on the report. And finally, a really cool feature about this, given that the CSV is a little manual, we have leveraged on what's capable from Okta, and we are able to actually pull managers from Okta and assign them to users in this CSV campaign. So you'll simply just select that you want to pull managers, you'll select the source, and then click pull. And now what this has done is it's automatically assigned managers to these accounts, and it has populated the values, which now when you want to go through and auto delegate, you could do so. So it takes a lot of that manual error out, it takes a lot of the time out, and it really puts it in a safe, streamlined place where we're not reinventing the wheel. We are simply just using what Okta's created and using this amazing, quick, efficient platform to help you get the most accurate and complete access reviews possible. And just going back to the presentation, you can see our pricing right here. It's extremely simple. This pricing does include our support for up to a year. So we will happily walk you through any sort of situations that you have, any deployment, any setup. But you can see as the user count goes up, the license price does go down, but it does start at $2 per unique user and goes down from there. I also want to mention that this includes unlimited applications, unlimited reporting, and all features that are coming within the 2020 year, they will be included on this as well. Garrett, I'll pass it on back to you, but that's all I had for the demo.
Fantastic, team. We got a whole set of questions. Austin, could you be so kind as to review them and then ask the particular panelist on each question?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll start from the beginning here. We got a few questions that may have been answered earlier on, but still want to get to them just to make sure we get them. So the first question is, what is the difference between SOC 1 and SOC 2?
Shannon, Stacey question.
That's a great question. The main difference between a SOC 1 and SOC 2 is one is more for your financial reporting environments, whereas the other is used more for understanding how your environment's doing around your product. The big component, the big difference, I mean, there's a slew of them, but the big difference is really around the financial reporting aspect, so that your customers who have to do financial reporting audits every year, they rely on a SOC 1. It's a reliance mechanism to rely on the SOC 1 and make sure your internal controls and processes are operating effectively. And it's been tested by a third-party audit assessor. But that's the high level. So.
Awesome. Thank you, Shannon. Next, it looks like we have, how does one integrate their compliance into product marketing? And then they were wondering if there's an example. Stacey, I think this is one of the topics you were talking about, if you don't mind taking it.
Yes, I'll take it. I know Shannon was speaking to me earlier, but incorporating in marketing, you can do it in one of two ways. So one is where you're talking about how you're compliant and what you're going to do, whether you're a cloud-based SaaS solution or whether you're an on-prem solution. When folks use your product, they want to make sure, especially if they're subject to other regulatory requirements, they want to make sure that your product is not going to put them at risk of being out of compliance. So if you're marketing that you meet certain compliance needs, they know that by using your product, they won't have to risk their compliance, and they have some satisfaction that you're adhering to certain standards of confidentiality, integrity, and availability and accountability, industry standards wise, if you have various regulations to state that you as a company and your product follows these type of regulations. Secondly, there's the one where you can actually, if your product is a security product, or if it's a risk product, or if it's a compliance product, if you can target what aspects or various frameworks that your product can meet. For example, I'll give you an example for clarity. If your product is an anti-malware product, you can market on which controls, which requirements across ISO, NIST, PCI, HIPAA, FFIAC, GLBA, a number of different frameworks and regulations. You can call out those controls specifically and say, this product meets these requirements. If you have an IPS or IDS product, same if you're compliant. Maybe you have a reporting tool, right? Some of the frameworks have reporting requirements. So if you're required to some of your FFIAC, you may have some financial annual reports that you may have to do. So, or you have your strategic plans that are required under FFIAC. So if you have these types of tools, you speak exactly to the actual report or control requirement number or control number. And those are things that you can incorporate with your marketing department. You get a third-party assessor to come in and say, they are accurate, it does this. You have your internal documentation that you put with your manuals and guides and what have you, that shows how you can help people become compliant or how you are compliant. And then put some great graphics on it. It becomes a great marketing tool.
Excellent. Thank you so much for answering that. We had another question come in. What recommendations do you have for building a business justification in cases when the organization only adheres to the compliance requirements, but the security controls are insufficient for their environment? Stacey and Shannon, do you mind tackling that one?
Yeah, I can go ahead. So this pretty much takes us back to our discussions on making risk-based decisions, right? I always like to say sometimes the proof is just in the pudding, right? So when you come in and different managers, directors have different thought process on how they want to handle their organization. Some of them say we have to meet these compliance requirements, no more, no less. But as I was saying earlier, when you're looking at compliance, it's designed to work with your organization. So if you're dealing with sensitive data, or if you're dealing with there's some other sensitive availability needs or what have you that needs to be met within your environment, you need to address that. And if the compliance requirement just gives you a bare minimum of what you need to do, if it's insufficient, then you need to use other tools to your benefit, whether it's using your penetration test, whether it's using a vulnerability assessment, whether it's using some sort of test to show that this is putting you at risk. And you want to, when you're dealing with making business justifications, you want to tie it to the business, whether you're going to tie it to liability, whether you're tying it to financial risk as well. So if you can look at something, if we do this and we're compliant, so from a compliance standpoint, we may not get fined. However, we also know that within our business, we operate we operate in a certain manner that we need to add maybe an additional control for a remote user or what have you, or what you need. And if you do it that way, then if you're not doing that, then you've opened yourself up to risk. So if you kind of explain the exposure is from a financial standpoint and from a reputational standpoint, a lot of times that sort of puts it in the perspective for those who are making business decisions that may not be your security or compliance experts.
Excellent, thank you. All right, I'll give you two a break. Here's a YouAttest question. Can YouAttest see user logs? Yes, YouAttest absolutely has the ability to have user log view access. That would be under the individual audit type of section. So if you want to perform a access review, see what's changed, you are absolutely able to see that pretty easily and pretty quickly. And then looks like we have another question. Okay, what role do third-party vendors play in organizations' compliance function? I think that might be best for Shannon and Stacey. My answer might be a little biased.
Well, so third-party vendors, right? They can come in multiple manners. One could be they're an independent third-party assessor coming in to do an audit of the environment and provide some response on how the environment's functioning. 2, it could be a tool that's coming in to help streamline and create a systematic approach to manual efforts. And 3, it could be a subject matter expert bringing on site to provide guidance, understanding, really interpreting what the regulatory requirements or what is required by any of these compliance frameworks, and helping, and these SMEs can be used to help implement and ensure that the customers or the environment is meeting the requirements. The difference between, say, a third-party independent auditor versus a subject matter expert is a third-party auditor can't help you fix your problems. They come in and tell you what your problems are and or tell you your environment's looking amazing and that you get 5 stars across the board, right? Versus a SME can come on site, help you do gap assessments, which is pretty much an audit, but they can help remediate it. And they can help provide the solution and guidance on making your environment better. And that could be providing guidance on tools, as well as how to configure your environment, so on and so forth.
Excellent. I want to be conscious of everyone's time. There's one more question I really wanted to get to, and it's along just asking around what exactly is auto delegation, and then what are, if there's any AI components to YouAttest, and if we're heading in that direction. So I will say currently right now, what we have is what we showed you. We have the ability to automatically assign managers to the applications that they're associated with. This is all possible by pulling the information provided within Okta and Active Directory. And then finally, where we're headed towards is we're really driven around the event-based access review. And so when there's a change, when someone is changing titles, positions, YouAttest is going to capture that, and we're going to make sure that a notification is sent out to the responsible party, and they're going to have a chance to review not only is their current access good, but they may have changed positions. Is their old access still appropriate? Is this something that is necessary? So that should be expected by the end of the summer.
Perfect. And great to wrap it up, Austin. And Stacey and Shannon, one key question. How can people get a hold of you?
Great. You can get a hold of us via our website and I'll add it to the chat, www.QoSConsultingSolutions.com. You can also send us a direct email at sales@QoSConsultingSolutions.com.
Fantastic. That was wonderful. Enjoyed it. I think it was very informative for us and for our audience. Everyone, have a great day.
Thank you.